we are promoting functional medicine, and I would like to show you how we want to integrate functional medicine into a cancer concept. Cancer can strike anyone. If the prognosis is right, every second person will have cancer in the future, and every second cancer patient will die from it. I don't believe that, because we can do a lot to prevent this development, and that is why we developed Miskawaan, Individualized cancer concept, that is 4 parts: prevention, detection, therapy, and repair. Due to the time, of course, I can only scratch the surface of this huge topic, but I want to highlight a couple of things. Prevention. Let's start with prevention. Lifestyle, I don't want to talk a lot about that, because we all know we have to stop smoking. Alcohol is a problem. Food, we promote a low-carb food primarily, and phyto-prevention. I come back to that one later. Of course, microbiome is very important. We do this PCR-based microbiome search in every patient, and then with the different kinds of probiotics, we try to establish a healthy gut flora. I had a speech about that already in 2003 in Vienna at the Menopause Congress, but nobody would listen. It was empty. And everybody said, oh, this crazy guy with his funny ideas of bacteria and that stuff. And now everybody is doing research, and now I think it's very well known and recognized that the gut bacteria are very important for our health, especially immune system. Genetics, we don't do a lot of genetics right away when a patient comes, but if he has a very high burden of cancer in his family history, we do a whole exome sequencing focusing on the cancer genes, on the gene expression of cancer genes. Heavy metal screening, very important. We do that also with the oligoscan, because most of the heavy metals, especially mercury, but also aluminium, we know that from this David Avance, are hormone disruptors and can start a tumor. Immune surveillance, very important. We check the functionality of killer cells, of T cells, of macrophages, monocytes, and we have here a good lab, Wessolly in Bangkok, which is doing all these tests for us. Some tests we can, until now, only do in Germany and send the blood to Germany. We have clinics here in Bangkok, in Hong Kong, Samui, Vienna, and in Germany, near Stuttgart. Most important, sleep. Why sleep? Has anybody an idea why sleep is in the prevention and also the therapy of cancer so important? It's the melatonin. Oh no, not that far. Okay, that is food. Already in 2011, there were studies released which showed that many plant stuffs can used for prevention and therapy of cancer. We know them all. Here we are. And that is why I love Asian food. Because that is, all these plants are very more often in Asian foods than in European or Western foods. And so I always feel better when I'm here, and I'm eating all the time the local food, and feel after days already much better than in Germany. So a friend of mine has composed a supplement with all these substances in it, in a kind of biological supplement. It's called Ococorn, and that is what we give in prevention, but also in therapy. My favorite, curcumin. the bioavailability of curcumin is low. That is why we have infusions with high doses of curcumin, and we are treating not only cancer with curcumin, but also neurological diseases and chronic inflammation, autoimmune diseases. So here you can see the different actions of the curcumin, but also ECPC and resveratrol, that is inflammation. Everything begins with a chronic inflammation, cancer, autoimmune diseases, whatever. And here you can do a lot with curcumin, and we combine it. We have also infusions with ECPC and other substances I'll show you later. So the role of probiotics, I think we'll have a lecture about that later. And so in cancer, in getting rid of mutagens, delaying the onset of tumors, alleviating the side effects of chemotherapy, chemotherapy, easing the post-operative complications, because in a chemotherapy you destroy more of the microbiome than by antibiotics. And foiling remission and lifting the spirit of the survivors. If you don't have the right microbiome, or you have an inflamed gut, you will not transform tryptophan into serotonin, and that is a link gut depression. And so it is a must to keep the gut flora in a good condition. And there's lots of studies in the meanwhile. So that was immunology yesterday. That could have been me 68 years ago. I spent a lot of time on the farm of my uncle, and I played all the time with the piglets and with the pigs, and so that is most likely that I did that. And I think one of our big problems is the hygiene hype nowadays. Well, children have to play with dirt and with animals and to build up a good immune system. And for example, I never got any vaccinations but tetanus and hepatitis because I had to do that because I'm a doctor. But the last one is from 20 years ago, and I still have a good level of antibodies, so I don't need a new vaccination. And when I was 8 years old, I got the measles. So all the children from the neighborhood were brought to me to play with me. So all the children in the neighborhood had measles at the same time, acquired a good immune system, and the parents were not affected because they had the same thing when they were young. I don't know what's going wrong now with the immunology. I think we should think about that. So, our best weapon against cancer cells are the NK cells, especially the direct cytotoxicity mechanism, because killer cells can dock on a cancer cell and inject this peltorin and granzyme, and that kills the killer cells. They can do that without being informed by other immune cells about this tumor. They detect the tumor right away. And that is why we are trying to first to check the functionality of these cells, and then how we can improve the functionality. And that is a test we can also do here in Bangkok. We take the killer cells, put them together with leukemia cells, and after a while we check how many cells have been killed. And then we see if it's okay, then we can leave it like it is. If not, we start with the stimulation, and we have a lot of weapons, only a small selection, mistletoe, and mistletoe is not mistletoe. We have different mistletoes depending on which tree the mistletoe has grown. And that is why we test the killer cells with different kinds of mistletoes. Because if you take the wrong mistletoe, it reverses, it blocks the immune system. You can check that with IL-10 and TGF beta, and mostly after half a year, you have to recheck it again. Otherwise, it's the reverse effect. Then peptides from thymus, from spleen, from animals, arabinoxylan, that is a certain sugar, and cimetidine, most interesting substance. The studies about that come from Wuhan. They found out that with cimetidine, it's against gastric acid. You can stimulate the killer cells, but not only the killer cells, also the T cells. Special T cells, the tumor infiltrating T cells, they go into the tumor and start killing there. And that is why that is, I'm using that all the time, but after testing. That is, for example, a test. This patient had a prostate cancer, got radiation, and you can see over there the basic killing rate, 12%, very low. And then we tested all kinds of substances, vitamin C, and different kinds of mistletoe. Nothing worked really well, except lectinol, that is a mixture of mistletoe. 8 months later, he had already increased his basal killing rate from 12 to 46, which is very good. And suddenly, all kinds of stimulants went positive, especially arabinoxylan. And so we continued the therapy with that. We check also the tumor-associated macrophages. If you find an elevated M2 macrophages, that has a very bad prognosis, because these macrophages support the tumor and don't fight him. You have to find out how to increase the M1 macrophage. So now my hobby, melatonin. I had the honor to lead a session about melatonin in Vienna in December in the Menopause Congress, and the main speaker was Russell Reiter. He had a very good lecture. You can find this lecture on YouTube. It's worth to hear it. So that is what happens with light. Goes into your eyes, goes to the nucleus suprachiasmaticus, and then to the pineal gland, and blocks the production of melatonin. That is what should be in the morning only. In the morning, and not at night, because the pineal melatonin is synthesized and released primarily at night in darkness. So, and already in 2006 we had this article, epidemiologic studies have reported an increased cancer incidence due to light at night. 2 years later, the end of night, why we need darkness. In the meanwhile, World Health Organization has classified light at night as a class 2A carcinogen. So, and but I don't know why that is so unknown. It's very old stuff, very old research. And this Professor Eitel from USA, he started with research about melatonin when he was 24, and he's now 83. So that is what melatonin is doing in the body. It's a global player. As you know, autophagy, apoptosis, epigenetics, mitochondria, very important for the mitochondria. We'll see that later. And all kinds of influences on any level. And so, melatonin, I think, is the most important hormone we have. It's not a sleeping pill. That is highly underestimated, and nobody knows about that. For example, here melatonin goes down in aging. And many cancers are age-related. Maybe it has something to do with the low melatonin in aging people. And that is why I recommend to give melatonin to everybody. Not for sleeping. I take it every night. So that is the most interesting study. The first line here, you see mice, they got injected tumor cells, breast cancer cells, and were kept during constant light. The second group had a 12-hour light, 12-hour darkness. And so, same group, same stuff. So the tumors growing very, very slowly in the day-night group. After 28 days, the first line died, and then they continued. Of course, the tumors were growing much more slowly. And then they added, and then they put tamoxifen to this 12 hours day, 12 hours light and 12 hours darkness, added tamoxifen, the tumors disappeared. So the melatonin led to a better action of the chemotherapy. And then they tested the same arrangement, all the time light, daylight, and melatonin. All the time daylight and melatonin had the same effect like day and night. So it is the melatonin which is blocking the cancer cells. And then they, after 40 days, the cancer was growing under melatonin also, but then they combined it with tamoxifen, nearly no tumor there. So, and then we'll see that later in this liquid biopsy test. Tamoxifen is not only, I think, not only an option for breast cancer, it's also an option for many other cancers also. So, melatonin, that is the finding from 2015, is also stabilizing the cells. So the metastasis is not as easy under melatonin. Different mechanism, but also the EGF is downregulated. Endothelin is influenced, and the MMP9 is blocked. So the metastasizing is not as easy as without melatonin. And here you see glucose. Well, mostly we come to that back later, to the Warburg effect, but in Warburg-dependent cells, you could see glucose uptake is dependent on day-night. The red line is only light. So there's a constant glucose uptake. And the lactate release is always high under light and has a rhythm during night, and always above the level. And here that is the thymidine incorporation, that is a sign for the growth of the tumor growth. It is under light always high, and in day-night it goes down sharply during the night. So you can say cancer is a matter of light. Same here with DNA content and with the tumor weight. So what does melatonin do? It reduces cancer initiation, cancer progression, cancer metastasis, and most important, due to the protection of the mitochondria, it is also protecting the heart from side effects by doxorubicin. Later we come back to that. So the next step, early detection. If we want to heal cancer, we have to get in early. And so we have this Phantom, the hidden technology. I think in Thailand the test is that they are outside the people who are promoting that. I wanted to start with a quick question. Why can you see that in a glucose PET CT? Quite simple. Most of the aggressive cancer cells deliver glucose, and of course they concentrate it, and so you can get this contrast here. And that is why I cannot believe that nobody is connecting that to nutrition. If a cancer cell concentrates glucose, so you have to take the glucose away. And this guy, already in 1924, Otto Warburg, a German doctor, got the Nobel Prize for finding out that tumor cells eat sugar. So, but he didn't know why, and he just said that is the reason for cancer is sugar. That is not true, but that cancer cells mainly consume glucose, that is true. And that because even if there's enough oxygen there, because normally if you are doing sports and you exaggerate, then there is no oxygen left in your muscles, and then for a short while you can go on an anaerobic pathway, but only for a short while, and that switches back as soon as you have oxygen again. But it's different in the cancer cell. So this is the pathway of this third way of generating energy. Aerobic glycolysis regulated by TKTL1 gene, and that is this gene is very important for us because our cells can switch between different metabolic pathways. That is a trick of evolution that brought us our dominance. But in cancer cells, this TKTL1 gene is switched on irreversibly, and that makes the cancer cell dependent on glucose. And that is why the cancer needs so many blood vessels, not for getting oxygen, but getting sugar. So this gene has been discovered in 1995 by a friend of mine, Dr. Coy, and in the cancer research in Heidelberg, and that was what Warburg didn't know. And that is the TKTL1 regulates the pentose phosphate pathway. And that is another gene, APO10, it's responsible for apoptosis. And if a cancer cell doesn't want to go into apoptosis, this APO10 is overexpressed, but most of the times it doesn't work. But you can detect it later. And so it is in all tumors, in benign or malignant tumors, if APO10 is elevated, then there is something wrong with the proliferation and with the apoptosis. And that is the test, the function of the test. Macrophages migrate from blood into tissue, and then they find cancer cells, consume a bit of the cancer cell, and these macrophages go back into the bloodstream with these tumor-specific structures, especially APO10, TKTL1, incorporated, and there we can find them. And then we can check, are there macrophages there with a high content of APO10 or TKTL1, then the tumor is around. So yeah, that is the, here we should get the tumor in this carcinoma in situ. Then if we get it in this situation, we can heal all the tumors, or nearly all the tumors. But here it's probably too late. And so we are doing this test in healthy people every year, because if it's in the beginning, it's positive, it's negative, and after 1 year, positive, then you know, oh, okay, this tumor had only 1 year to grow. And tumors don't grow, it's not like an explosion. They need their time, and then you can react and get most of the tumors healed. Same thing here. We have this in the beginning negative, then APO10 gets positive, that can mean a polyp or a cyst or something like that. And then, but when the correlated test goes positive, then there must be some cancer cells around. And that is, for example, a surveillance of a patient. He had a relapse of a colon tumor. Was a few years nothing, and And then the Phantom test started to be positive. And then this patient got an immune therapy with dendritic cells. And the TKTL1 epithelium was increasing. Why? Because the therapy is good. So many cancer cells died and were eaten by macrophages, and so you find the reliefs. And then they got an operation, the control was green, and second immune therapy, nothing left. So you can do monitoring of to prevent a relapse. Lots of study about that. Who wants to read them, how can do that? Now we come to therapy. Food microbiome, of course, we talked about that. Immune therapy, we are doing that with dendritic cells, with killer cells. I'll come back to that one later. Liquid biopsy, infusions, we have all these alternative cancer substances in infusions. We get it produced in Germany because you will not find it on the market. Hypothermia is an option, and sometimes we combine it with classical oncology, but that is what we are doing ourselves, but together with oncologists. I'll show you a therapy later. This is who's interested in all these metabolic pathways of cancer cells, because it's not only the TKTL1. Some cancer cells can also go on OXPHOS, work with the mitochondria. Some can eat fat, and so here you have different pathways and the special treatment for the specific pathway. It's too long to bring it here, but it's very interesting. So, sugar is an important issue in cancer. So, what role in healthy cells is, of course, because it produces not many free radicals. From the glucose, it's a fast degradation. You have a lot of energy from glucose. And some cells, like endothelial cells, nerves, retina, they are from primarily on this TKTL1 pathway, the fermentation of the glucose and the embryo, because the embryo is a tumor. So, and the role in cancer cells, of course, that's the main source for energy for the cancer cells, and degradation of surrounding matrix by high lactate levels, invasion and metastasis, resistance towards radio and chemotherapy. All these tumors with TKTL1 positive are very resistant to chemotherapy and radiation also. So, but if we take the sugar out, the glucose out, what can we do for these cells? Very simple. Already Warburg in 1924 gave the answer. We use galactose. You see here the glucose metabolism is much higher. In tumor cells, the galactose nearly nothing. And so, and the normal cells, they can absorb galactose, and they have an enzyme that splits the galactose into glucose, and so it's an intracellular glucose supply. The cancer cell cannot do that. And so you can give your patients, instead of glucose, galactose. So yeah, TKTL1 resistance against cystatin, paclitaxel. I told you that already. And now we come and see a very interesting finding. Normally when we talk with oncologists and we talk about giving patients our food supplements, they say, what are you doing? We are creating free radicals through our therapy, and you give antioxidants. You do you destroy our therapy, but that is not true. For example, resveratrol, it promotes free radicals in our cancer cells and is antioxidant in a normal cell. And resveratrol directly inhibits the promoter activity of TKTL1. So, and you have a similar effect with the vitamin C. Vitamin C looks like a glucose molecule, very similar. And the cancer cells, they take a lot of this vitamin C. much more than a normal cell because they think it's glucose. And a cancer cell always has a lot of iron in the cytoplasm. And then the vitamin C reacts with the iron and in a so-called Fenton reaction and creates a lot of free radicals. And that is what most ecologists don't understand. It is a completely different situation. In this case, vitamin C is pro-oxidative and not anti-oxidative. So the next good therapy is with dendritic cells. Immature dendritic cells sit in the tissue and wait until they get an antigen to see, and then they migrate, and the mature dendritic cells are presenting these antigens to T cells, to killer cells, to encourage them to attack the tumor or whatever. So, and that is pretty well known. We can inject peptides from cancer cells, antigens, into a body and hope that they find the dendritic cells, and the dendritic cells inform T cells, NK cells to attack the cancer. The better way is, and we are doing that also with Wessolly here in Bangkok, we take the dendritic cells out, show them the specific tumor of the patient, because each patient has his own tumor. Even if he has not a single breast cancer is the same. So you have to find out which type you have. So we show the dendritic cells outside from the body, the antigen of the patient's specific tumor, and then we expand it and until it's a lot of dendritic cells, and then we inject it back into the body. And then these dendritic cells will do the action. We do the same thing with NK cells. We take the NK cells out. They are treated with cytokines and cultured, and when it's a huge number, we get it back into the patient and it will attack the tumor. So that is our arsenal. IV, curcumin, DCA, amygdalin, artesunate, vitamin C, ECGC, germanium, cocaine, and in the future we'll have, I think it will be by the end of this year, also silibinin, apigenin, berberine. I'll show you later. These are substances very effective in against cancer cells. We find that out in the metabolic test. So tumors develop a very individual profile, which is different from person to person. That is the most important message. And the treatment has to be carried out individually. That is why we call our program Individualized program. And so we have the next tool. That is a case report. It's a female. She had a head and neck cell carcinoma. Was treated with operation, radiation, and platinum chemotherapy. 9 months later, she went back to the oncologist, and everything was checked, and they said, no, the cancer is over. You're healthy. And then I encouraged her to do a test, a liquid biopsy, and we found very dangerous tumor cells, because the CD44, CD133 are tumor stem cells. And so no way of being healed. And the next step is we test all kinds of substances and can see which ones have a positive reaction on the tumor or can kill or inhibit the tumor to grow. The yellow ones, they are just neutral. They are useless, and so you can cut these therapies out. The green ones are working, and the blue ones also. So in this patient, hypothermia is positive. We have patients where hypothermia is negative. And here we see these platinum substances. Magenta makes tumor cells more resistant. So her therapy made the tumor cells more resistant. And quercetin, sulforaphan, salinomycin, vitamin C, high doses, positive, we can use that. So next one curcumin is positive, digoxin. Here the niclosamide, that is a drug to fight worms in the digestive tract. Very, very valuable for her. And then we have a special panel with the natural products like amygdalin didn't work, abigenin didn't work, artesunate didn't work, berberine didn't work, but cannabis, so she's getting cannabis. Curcumin positive, and hypothermia again, and niclosamide, resveratrol, salinomycin, silibinin, vitamin C. So now we select from this panel, we select the best therapy for this patient. And that looks like, that is salinomycin working against the tumor stem cells together with silibinin, because CD44, CD133, that is the markers for tumor stem cells. So we will give her this therapy, and the classical therapy is also the combination of atezolizumab and nivolumab is also positive. So we gave her all the results. She's in Singapore, and hope that the oncologist would react on that, but didn't. They said, no, nothing. So that is her therapy: IV curcumin, ECGC, vitamin C, hypothermia, oral cannabis, niclosamide, resveratrol, and the salinomycin is an antibiotic which is used in veterinary medicine. It's not available in Germany for human use in humans, so I'm still looking for that one. And possible combination with these biologicals. So that is our way of therapy. Of course, combined with all with oncocolon, with high dose vitamin D, but that is what you know already. So that could be a therapy together with the oncologist. Ketogenic diet. Dr. Lodi would say you do the same thing with complete fasting. You can do that, but some people are in such a bad condition already that fasting for a longer period of time you cannot do that. And so, but at least a ketogenic diet. Then we start with curcumin, and then they get the chemo. And during the chemo, they get sugar because the tumor cells are in a starvation mode, and so they really take every molecule of glucose and take other substances into the cell also. And then we do a chelation, give of course minerals, then the oral therapy with methadone, cannabis, after testing, thymus, mistletoe, cimetidine, and our infusions with germanium, amygdalin, DCA, vitamin C, artesunate, and then the whole thing starts again. So that could be a combination with the classical oncology and our methods. We don't want to have a competition, or we are not enemies. We have to do everything to help our patients. So, and here again, melatonin, chemotherapy with doxorubicin. That is, there are lots of mitochondria in the heart, lots of it, and they are destroyed by the doxorubicin. And that is the reason for the heart failures after this therapy. And with melatonin, you can prevent that, because melatonin protects also the mitochondria and can prevent all these different damages done by doxorubicin and other chemotherapies. And I think the same mechanism is for the neurological damage patients have after chemotherapy. And so always give high doses of melatonin. So thank you for your attention and for coming here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wessolly.